crafty babes. Welcome back to my channel. I am sharing another page within my 2020 25 December faves. As a little refresher, I am using a deconstructed Heidi Swapp Storyline Chapters notebook with a junk journal type of situation where I have inserted different kinds of papers and pockets and things like that inside of the pages. And now I have a paper bag basically that I used as one of my pages. So I'm going to try to incorporate this photo of me in the mirror. This is after I had decorated the house. I had an extra buffalo plaid bow, and so I hung it right there on the mirror and was very proud of myself for decorating the house. And I thought that these supplies from In a Creative Bubble would work really well. They have like that kind of darker mustard tone that really went well with that brown and the green, of course. And I also loved the fact that these two cards had a lot of black writing, and so it helped with the contrast. It helped bring the blacks out of all of the supplies, including that bow. And so I'm just using a couple of strips of washi here. I am going to struggle with this page, and so we're gonna see all the different ways that I have tried to make this page work. The long card there on the left hand page is it's a TN card, so it is that size, and it already has all of those little elements built into it, which is great because then I can just use that for journaling and I don't really have to lay out a grid, but it still kind of feels like that. So here I know that on that card and on the bag, I want it to be a little bit of a cluster situation, and I mean cluster, I mean it in a good way. So I'm just pulling out different things that I thought maybe would work a little better than the first things that I brought out. And now I'm trying to really do a grid so that the left part of the left side feels more fitting with that long TN card, because it just felt like a little discombobulated there. But I know I want to use reds and mustards just because that's what fits so well with these supplies. So part of building a grid layout like this is just finding places for things to fit. It is basically just like a puzzle or a mosaic where you're just filling in spaces with what you have and what colors look good and what feels good. So I really am trying to pull in buffalo plaid to that right hand side because we've got the bow on the left, and I really want the two to just have an equal space within the layout. But it really is not working out for me to just layer this card. So it's a little too harsh, so I use a doily and think, well, maybe it softens it a little bit and makes it doesn't stick out as much, which is great. I don't hate what's happening right now, but it is feeling just a little unbalanced for me. So we are just going to put everything straight down the middle and kind of see where that gets us. I have, you can't see this off camera, but I am cutting up another piece of paper because what I want is something as long as the Merry Everything card, and the current buffalo plaid card I have right there is just a 3x4, so it won't be long enough. So I'm thinking about the green buffalo plaid, and it's feeling kind of good there. I really like it. And I'm deciding if I want it to be slightly longer or if I even want to use it at all. And so we've exchanged it for the black, which does feel a lot better. It just brings in that black and white contrast that I was looking for. And I'm just auditioning it, just kind of giving myself an opportunity to look at how it's going to feel, if it's appropriate for it to be wider than the Merry Everything card, or if it needs to be the same width. And also whether or not I want it to be stacked or whether or not I want there to be some space in between. So I am actually going to cut up a different size because the way that I cut it left like teeny tiny little slivers on the end, which was annoying. When you're working with buffalo plaid, you kind of have to be careful of the lines that you're cutting on, which is totally fine. I worked it out. So now I feel really good about the way that this cluster is starting to take shape down at the bottom. It is going to be its own separate little thing, and that's great. I have that, if before I moved it off camera, there's a space above the photo, and I want to use that for a title. And I'm going to use vellum and some stamps and some stitching. So I thought I wanted to use a more fancy kind of font, which is that first one that I brought out, but I actually end up wanting to use something a little bit more simple that matches some of the font choices within the cards. So I chose a very simple lowercase font from Carrie Bradford. I put some space in between them. I didn't want them to be too close together, and there we are. I used vellum just because I didn't want to stamp directly on the paper because I wanted to do some things with it. And I also like the way that vellum looks. I like that when it rips, it shows a little bit of like an extra white border, which adds a little bit of texture and depth. And, but I didn't want to put a whole colored pattern paper or patterned paper there either. So vellum is always a good choice and something that I definitely don't use enough of. So I've made sure that it now fits, and I'm going to do, I'm thinking about just stapling it down, but then I really wanted to pull some texture in, and so I'm going to find some fabric, which we don't see just yet, so we're getting there. So I'm gonna rip a piece of this fabric and see how we get on here. I'm just giving it a little bit of a view so I can see if that's really what I want. And we have stitched. So all I did was place it behind the vellum, run it through the sewing machine as I crinkled and ruffled it underneath so that it ended up being rough and pleated, but very messy. And I realized it is too tall. I didn't want that much extra fabric sticking out of the top, so I'm just cutting and then ripping so that it still has that worn edge and not a straight cut edge. And there it is. Now we're going to start adhering everything. I'm pretty happy with where everything is settled. I'm going to actually stitch these tickets and doily onto that cluster as well. I'm using some score tape to adhere everything down, especially with these notebooks that are not in pockets. I'm using score tape a lot more often just because it really sticks. And now that that cluster is sewn, I can just adhere the whole thing down at once. We'll get all of these things adhered, and then just a tiny bit of journaling within those little tags is all that is next. And that is going to wrap it up for us. Thank you guys so much for joining me for another 25 December Faves process video. Hope you loved it. Hope you got some inspiration. Hope you're staying involved and staying excited about this project as we move through December. Thank you guys so much, and we'll talk soon. Bye.